Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship with Rink, brought to you as always by our incredible local friends in Waggle Golf, 9 Mile Brewing, and Barrel Theory Beer Company. Back from what I imagine was an incredible vacation, Joe Smith, athletic. Let's talk some Wild and Gophers. But Joe, how was the trip?
Trip was amazing. We went to Portugal. So our first international trip with our baby boy, 8-month-old. Got to stamp his passport for the first time. This was pretty cool. Just 60-degree weather. Lisbon's a really cool city. Right on the water, a lot of really cool architecture and everything, and got to walk around different little plazas and squares and markets, and went to the coast and the Sagres and Lagos. So a lot of kid-friendly little hotels and resorts there that give you some babysitters and kids clubs, so you can have a little date time and also a lot of time with the family. So overall, definitely recommend that to any families with young kids. Hardest part is just getting over there with a long flight.
Yeah, I was going to say that's way more brave than I am right now, and my kid's even a little bit older. So kudos. Glad that it worked out, though. Quick rundown, everybody. Brief Gopher talk here. Meat on the bone is going to be Joe and Russo talking all the injuries, pre-trade deadline, and we'll get you out of here with some NHL hot takes. But Joe, Gophers, they swept Ohio State this weekend, which is like great on paper. There was definitely times where I was not feeling comfortable, we'll say, but they got the sweep. And more importantly, Michigan State did not take care of business against Penn State. And now the Gophers are leading the Big Ten with 1 week to go. I think the most important question here, just given Bob's history, does he want the bye? Historically, he doesn't, but is this year different?
It's a good question. I mean, it's hard to believe they're even in this position right now. I thought it was Michigan State's season for it. They very well still could. But yeah, I mean, I know people, rest versus rust and the bye week kind of thing, but they've dealt with some injuries this year, and they have a pretty mature team, I think, going through. So I think they could handle a bye pretty well. And I'll base it on matchups, who they match up well with in round 2 or round 1. Could make a difference in a lot of this. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be stressed about I don't have that superstition, or I don't have that history as a longtime coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but I would be open to a bye, especially after the way the season's gone, to get yourself set up and some quality practice time. This is a team that has several guys that have been on some runs before or have been playing in the playoffs. So I think they can handle the situation well.
I think so too. I definitely lean that way. Now, the real question is, can we get there? Because the team that just took down Michigan State is who we face. We go into Penn State, and the Souliere's coming home party. Obviously going to be an emotional weekend for him. A lot on the line. I think it's safe to say that he's solidified his spot as being the number 1 goalie. Do you play him in both games if you're Bob? For anyone that missed it, 9 Mile Brewing just celebrated their 3-year anniversary. If you were one of the people that missed out on the fun, you can still grab not 1, but 2 different barrel-aged beers on tap. First up, 2 for his nibs, a vanilla honeybush infused red ale, slumbered in wheated whiskey barrels from J. Carver Distillery. Unique, complex, and objectively very tasty. Stop in soon before this one's gone. And for the birthday celebration, 9 Mile released an Imperial Rye Porter, which spent 12 months resting on freshly dumped rye barrels from J. Carver. I personally recommend both if you like darker, stronger beers. If not, 9 Mile offers a ton of other styles. You will absolutely be able to find something you love. 9 Mile is also pleased to announce 2 new weekly activities. With the exception of the last Monday of the month, Monday night at 7 p.m. is reserved for the Initials game hosted by Trivia Mafia. And each Thursday at 6 p.m., 9 Mile is partnering with the Bloomington Lions Club and other local charities to host Cash Bingo. Stop on into their Bloomington tap room for a pint or 2, or more if you wish, and a chance to win cash prizes.
You play him in both games, like in thinking that you'll have a bye week, right? So you want to play him as much as you can. But I guess if he's your guy going forward, if you think he's the number one and he's going to play in each round anyways, then I guess you do. But there's also an element of me that's like, if he's going to play the rest of the way, you don't have to play him in back-to-back or 2 and 3 situations and get him rested for the rest of the way. But I don't have a problem playing them both. Especially if you want to go and you want to win and you want to clinch potentially the championship there, then the kid can do it. He'll be an adrenaline junkie for this one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But yeah, there's definitely things from this weekend with Ohio State, just consistency's been a thing all year. And I think for the Gophers, just some of the big guys, and this is not a blanket statement by any means, but there's some guys that you can see, I don't know if it's complacency or taking a shift off or just not having your guy. Pretty much every goal came down to someone having a lapse, whether it was an effort or thought. Do you think that it's important to stay in games and get in the groove and fix these things, being kind of the counter argument to getting that by?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I go this way for NFL, other teams as well. I wouldn't be afraid of a bye. I think anytime with so many injuries that happen in playoffs, so many things that could happen like that, the more time you can have to practice, the more time you can have to get the guys together and do it. I would never shy away from that. As much as teams have won being a wild card in the NFL playoffs, that kind of thing, I say go and play to win and then let the cards fall what they may.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like no matter which way it goes, getting first or second place, Bob will spin it in the room as a big positive, and he'll spin it to the media as, I don't know, this isn't what I would have picked, but I guess we'll battle through it. So either way, we're going to be here for it. Let's not waste any time then, Joe. Let's kick it over to what everyone's here for, the chaotic news cycle that you and Russo had to battle through this week. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your Waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the latest edition of Fellowship of the Rink. Our guest is a good friend, Mike Russo of The Athletic, and busy time of year. Mike, come back from Four Nations, and now it's right smack in the middle of trade deadline season.
Yeah, I was thinking at trade deadline going to Victoria or Whistler and just vacationing, but as we're writing in today's Athletic, that's no longer the case. The Wild might be swimming in cap space in about 8 days.
Yeah, it is crazy how it works. We were thinking the last couple of months, there's no chance and whatever that they could make a move. They would love to, but they don't have no cap space. And now the latest injury, I think, Joel Eriksson Ek, week to week, and we believe it's obviously longer than the couple of weeks that they had said initially. What are the chances that this extends through the rest of the regular season, and what could that mean for what the Wild could do by next week?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. As you and I write in a story that's going to go up later today, they've got to get clarity on both guys going into March 7th, because if all of a sudden, Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek are going to be sidelined for the rest of the regular season, they not only have Eriksson Ek's $5.25 million that they could technically spend, but also Kaprizov's $9 million, and then do kind of what Tampa's done in the past with Kucherov, or obviously Vegas with their with the Mark Stone stuff, and have a bunch of money, and then these guys can come back in the playoffs. Kaprizov is the one that I think that they are really hoping is going to be back by mid to late March. He obviously had the surgery, the abdominal surgery, and I think that the biggest thing here is the timeline was originally supposed to be 4 weeks. I think it's been extended out, but as you and I both know, He needs a runway to get ready. And so you don't first of all, they are not a lock to make the playoffs. He's their best bet to make the playoffs. And he needs a runway to get ready for the season. Eriksson Ek, Brodin, guys like that, you could probably throw on the ice game 1 in the playoffs and they're going to be the same player. For some reason, Kaprizov always needs that runway. And we saw it in that Dallas series a couple of years ago, Joe. I mean, he said afterwards that he missed 13 straight games with the hammy. And then they held him out 2 of the last 4 games. And I think that because of that, he just never got going. He scored the first goal against Dallas, and then that was it. We didn't see him sort of score again. And so I think they want to get him back. So I don't think they want to play games with that. Eriksson Ek, though, this is a pressing matter. Like if he is gone 6 to 8 weeks, which is the timeline I keep on hearing, well, 7 weeks is the beginning of the playoffs. So, to me, you push that, but they can't just push that and not replace him. They have to go get a center. This team is just not deep enough. Marco Rossi's done an incredible job of stepping up all season long, but behind him are right now Gaudreau, Kuznetsov, and Devin Shore until Ryan Hartman comes back. And if one of those guys gets hurt, they're effed. So they've got to get a center, and I think that's gonna be the priority here in the next week and change before that 2 p.m. Central Time deadline on March 7th.
Well, absolutely, and I think with the centers that are on the market, and we've written about a few of these all season long, and Brock Nelson comes to mind. There's guys Cousins, obviously with the Sabres. Like, if you have that $5.25 million, who would be your go-to target at this point?
Probably Brock Nelson. I just think that he can, for 2 reasons. One, I think he can help in many, many ways now. And we know that the Wild have interest in bringing him back, so it would help in the future as well. He is somebody that right now, if you're going to replace it's hard to replace everything that Eriksson Ek does. But because Brock Nelson is so good in the faceoff circle and a great penalty killer, and we know could chip in offensively because all he does is score against the Wild. We've seen it in this building. I think that he can really step into that locker room and make an impact right away. I also think that Lou Lamoriello has a great respect for him, and if he's not going to resign there, he'd probably put him in a place where he wants to play. The problem is that there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested in Brock Nelson at the deadline. And so I don't know if the Wild have the assets or are willing to give up the assets that it would take to get any of these guys. Frankly, they gave up their first-round pick already in David Jiricek. I can't imagine after giving up your first-round pick that you want to trade future first-round picks. So then all you got is your second-round pick, and then you have to start looking at your prospects. Well, any team is going to ask about Zeev Buium and Janelle Urov and guys like that. I would assume that they are absolutely not being traded. So, so then who's next? Can you lasso one of these guys by throwing in a Liam Ogren, by throwing in a Riley Heidt, a Hunter Haight, somebody like that? This is what I wonder, and so I just don't know once the bidding war starts, if the Wild will have those assets. Cousins is intriguing because this would be a hockey trade. He's 24 years old. They have a lot of appreciation for him. There is got to be a reason why the Wild pro scouts are at every Buffalo Sabres game these days. In fact, Chris Kelleher was there last night when Cousins had 3 assists and assisted on all their goals in their comeback win. He's 24. He's big. He was an absolute junior star. He scored 31 goals as a 21/22-year-old in this league. My biggest concern with him is he just hasn't been the same player the last 2 years. He got absolutely destroyed in a fight with Garnet Hathaway a couple of Novembers ago. And if you watch that fight on YouTube, he just gets, essentially knocked out, and he just hasn't been the same player since, whether that's related or not. But huge upside. The other thing with him that's really intriguing, Joe, is that he's got cost certainty. He signed for 5 or 6 more years at 7-1 with a cap going up. 7-1 is if he turns into the player that the Wild or any other team thinks he could be, that absolutely would be something they could afford. What I would be concerned with is if you trade for Dylan Cousins at 7-1, does that make it much harder to afford Marco Rossi this summer? You could probably make both work, but it would probably take him out of every other unrestricted free agent plan that they want to do this offseason. But to have a Cousins and a Rossi up the middle with Eriksson Ek, that's pretty freaking good. And then you have Urov coming. So I do think that's intriguing. The other thing that makes me think it's doubtful is I don't know if Buffalo is going to be allowed to trade anybody at the deadline. Like if Kevin Adams, if they're going to clean house, if Kevin Adams is potentially going to lose his job after the season, if you're the owner in Terry Pagula, the Pagulas, I mean, are you letting Kevin make significant moves with any of your players at the deadline? So that would be my only other question there, is that if his job's on the line, is he allowed to trade a Tuck, a Cousins, whoever? I think they're probably scared to trade anybody right now.
With the question with Kaprizov, I think a lot of fans are a little frustrated because it went from day to day on December 23rd, missed a bunch of time. I think they wanted to rehab as opposed to doing surgery, which happens a lot of different teams. I think the concern is that it's such a vague, and kind of fans feel like they haven't, been as much transparency from a team, which I know is natural with injuries. But is there any long-term concern here with Kaprizov injury-wise? I know I talked to Bill Guerin a few weeks back. He said he's not concerned with the injury history in terms of giving him a big extension this summertime, but it seems as though this has been a weird year for him, and a lot of things behind the scenes where this isn't just cut and dry. As this is why Bill Guerin's saying, I don't know, because maybe he doesn't really know how long he'll be out.
Yeah, I don't think he knows, also because I think that this doctor was found by the agent, and so I think that it's not their medical team that's doing it, which is not abnormal, by the way. Like a lot of times when players have the type of surgery that Kirill's having, you sort of outsource it, and we've seen that with a lot of players. I mean, over the years, Marcus Foligno has gone to different doctors. That's just the way it works in the National Hockey. There are certain experts. We've seen that throughout history. If people go into James Andrews or Tony Miniacci, these famous doctors, Mark Philippon. And I think that's what happened here. So that could be part of it. I think they want to be careful with him. The type of surgery that I hear that he's had is not abnormal at all to hockey players. And so I'm not worried about him long term. But I get why the fans are frustrated. One, they pay a lot of money to come and watch this guy play, and they haven't seen him on the ice really since December 23rd, other than 3 games, and some of those were on the road. And again, the transparency, it's Bill Guerin's way. He just is not transparent with injuries, with timetables, things like that. It's been that way historically with him here, and I know that frustrates fans, and that's what it's come down to here. When he was first listed as day-to-day, I don't think the Wild were lying at all. I think he was day-to-day. They were trying over those courses of days to figure out what he was dealing with and how to treat it. He was leaving in and out of town to go see specialists, get things done and things like that. And obviously when he came back for those 3 games, I do think that those 3 games were actually a test trial between Kaprizov, the Wild, and his agent to just see how does it feel. And even though he looked good to me, he didn't have that burst that we saw, that we usually are accustomed to seeing from him. And he has a high standard for how he's playing. Nobody knows what he was feeling. I'm sure he was in discomfort. And finally, after that Chicago game, he obviously decided it was time to get this fixed. So I still think that we're going to see him in the regular season. And because of that, I don't think that they could just go out and use his $9 million if they know that he's going to be back.
Sure. And on the flip side of things, Mike, you were out with Team USA covering all the Four Nations tournament. You talk about the fans being upset about, lack of disclosure on Kaprizov. Now everyone's going crazy, whether it's on Twitter or the Boston Bruins front office, about the Wild's medical staff. And I know you've been a staunch defender. Like, what do you say to the people out there who are freaking out about the Wild medical staff?
Well, I'm not being a staunch defender. I'm just saying that everybody's taking a couple of, mysterious statements that made it very clear that the Bruins weren't happy, and now are just saying that the Wild's medical staff is garbage. That's my only thing. We don't know many details right now with what McAvoy was dealing with. Something happened where he was hurt against Finland in the 3rd period, it looks like, on video, when he was hit into the goalpost by Joel Armia. Although he had his right shoulder injured, and he grabs his left one. So I can't say for sure that we know that was the play. But something happened in that game. Against Canada, he decided to play. Clearly, he had a shoulder injury, and they decided to shoot him up to play the game in concert with the player. What we don't know is, was that in consultation with the Bruins doctors? Did the USA Hockey not consult with them because their GM was Canada's GM? Who knows? But they gave him a shot, and there was clearly some sort of infection that came from that for some reason. And clearly the Bruins weren't happy. We don't know all the details. Maybe that will come out at some point. But Don Sweeney met with the media the other day, and obviously didn't really go further into what they were upset about, and so we don't know. But now, because the Wild have been inundated with injuries this year and last year, everybody's just saying that they've got the worst medical staff ever. When you look at a lot of these injuries, and there's stuff that it's not a doctor's job to prevent a guy from getting a puck to the face. Joel Eriksson Ek has a broken foot. I mean, that is what's going on here. Bill Guerin doesn't want to say it. I'll say it. Now, when did that happen? That's what we don't know. Did it happen before the break? I do remember him blocking his last game against Carolina. He blocked a couple shots. He obviously missed the next game. Now, was it because of that? And did they decide to let him go? Technically, these teams, unless you're not medically clear, don't have the right, or weren't supposed to have the right to pull you. It's up to the player. It was always going to be player's choice. He decided to go and play. Did it worsen? Did it get hurt in Detroit? Did it get aggravated in practice? He obviously went through that entire practice the other day. We don't know. But now, because of all these injuries, everybody's just saying they got, for the rest of the time now, anytime we write a guy's out, we're going to have to go and say, oh, their medical staff needs to be overhauled. I think, like everything at the end of the season, Bill Guerin, like he does with his players, with his staff, everything, I think he'll look at everything and then make a decision. All right, does he agree? Right now, from what I gather, is that he's got the utmost confidence in his medical staff. The other thing here is that Dr. Boyd was the USA Hockey doctor. He's been the USA Hockey doctor since the 90s. He's a great doctor. He's been the Wild's orthopedic surgeon since day one, but he's the Wild's orthopedic surgeon. He deals with specific injuries with the Wild. He has nothing to do with Kirill Kaprizov's injury. He has nothing to do with what's going on with Jacob Lauko. They have different specialists for different things, but now it's like anytime anybody's hurt, you're going to blame this guy and this guy and this guy. I mean, it's just, to me, until we get more information, and trust me, Joe and I are asking questions and doing a lot of digging on this subject. But, the other thing here that I'll say is, I think because the Wild's policy, or Bill Guerin's policy, is not to give specific injury updates and timetables, there's fans here that are frustrated about that. And they're just assuming that the Wild don't know the injuries and don't know the timetables, and guys are being misdiagnosed, and they're conflating the two, where the reality is that they just are not telling us. And that's just Bill Guerin's way when it comes to injuries. And so I get why fans are frustrated, but they're now meshing everything together. And a lot of this is just social media nonsense, where people are just, throwing out a bunch of baloney. I mean, even the Matthew Tkachuk stuff, could USA Hockey say you are not playing? Absolutely. I don't think he would. I think it would have been over his dead body. But there are people out there saying, well, the Florida Panthers must be irate about this. Bill Zito, the president and GM of the Florida Panthers, was Bill Guerin's assistant GM. He knew exactly what was going on and what was being risked with Matthew Tkachuk. He knew the severity of that injury going into that game. They allowed him to play. And so, again, this is nothing to do with the USA medical staff there. It's they can make a recommendation, but then it's up eventually up to the player whether he's playing or not, unless they are just saying you are not playing, or the GM is saying you are not playing. And clearly, to me, that didn't happen there.
With the trade deadline, you mentioned maybe a hockey trade with Cousins or something like that. I know a lot of guys have no move and no trade clauses. Is there anybody on this roster you could see hey, as part of a hockey trade, these guys could be potentially looked at?
It's going to be really hard because of the no moves. I mean, obviously, I know a lot of Wild fans are like Ryan Hartman, but he does have a full no move that turns into a modified no trade July 1. So if he's traded, I think it happens in the offseason. The guys that I look at are can he find somebody to take Freddie Gaudreau, who's got a 15-note trade? You'd love at this point, I think the Jakub Trenin, I like him as a player, but that contract is, if they can move it, I think they would love to. And then the other thing is, can they move money out? Do you move a Declan Chisholm? Do you move a Johnny Merrill? Again, they're sending Dermott to the minors today if he's not claimed on waivers. So they would have him at least as insurance. But if all of a sudden you do lose Dermott, do you just throw away a Chisholm or a Merrill, when then you're an injury away from having major problems. So I don't know if that's really a pressing thing. like to me, if you traded a Chisholm or a Merrill, you'd probably want to get a defenseman back in some capacity, some sort of insurance. So, but now if they do have a bunch of cap space going to the deadline, they are going to have options. The problem is you can be over 23 men after the playoffs, but you have to be cap compliant. And after the trade deadline, you have to, you could be over 23 guys, but you have to be cap compliant. And if you're going to add a bunch of players, you're probably going to want to move some guys out. You don't want a bunch of players just sitting around not playing. That became a problem in the Dallas series. Don't you agree, Joe? Like all of a sudden, they added Klingberg, they added all these guys at the deadline, and next thing you know, Sundqvist and Johansson, all of a sudden guys are just sitting in the press box not playing. I mean, Nick Bukestad Alex Goligoski, I don't even remember them playing in the playoffs. So I don't know if you want a bunch of guys just sitting around not playing.
Speaking of sitting around not playing, Ryan Hartman spoke yesterday for the first time since his 10-game suspension was now reduced by Gary Bettman down to 8, which is a rare thing for Gary to do that. Clearly he's been working his bag off just to get ready, and he'll probably be in great shape when he gets back. I guess the question for me, as always, is will this affect change in Ryan Hartman? Because I know this is his 5th suspension since April 2022 or 20. And so I think, curious listening to him yesterday, kind of reiterate what he said in the hearing and everything, and with Gary Bettman, that it wasn't intentional to hurt Stützle. He didn't even know who was in the faceoff circle with him at that particular time. He was just trying to win a faceoff in the heat of the moment. And I'm really curious if this will be a wake-up call, as Gary Bettman suggested, as Bill Guerin suggested to me, as I've kind of suggested in my column. And do you think this might be one that sinks in for him? And if not, is this something where he has to probably worry about the patience from the organization from a lot of these things that are happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's going to know that he can't cross that line. The problem is that there is a certain style that he's got to play to be effective, and that's a lot of times going to that line and just trying not to cross it. And that would be my biggest concern is does he hurt his own game because he's so scared of doing something that's going to draw the eyes of the league and most importantly the refs. I do think that the refs are going to be watching him now. He has a tendency to lose his temper. I think that was part of what happened in that game in Ottawa. If you watch that second period, he is jawing with Garrett Rink, the referee, the entire period. He was getting into Travis Tomanek, and then I think Garrett came to the bench and tried to calm it down and essentially told him that you're very close to crossing that line, and then just didn't take his eyes off of him. So, all of a sudden when he gets into it with Stützle the first time, Garrett's just watching it, and he got two-handed and he goes down and he gets called for an embellishment penalty that I think defies logic that to think that he dove in that situation. And I think that's what made Ryan really angry. Is that, but then Ryan's got to be smart and know that, all right, now the referee is really going to be watching me. The ref knows this situation just happened, knows that Ryan's angry, and now Garrett who's a really good ref, is watching Ryan Hartman, whether Ryan knew it was Stützle or not, which I can't imagine he didn't, but whether Ryan knew it was Stützle or not, Garrett Rink knows it's Stützle. So he is watching Ryan like a hawk on that faceoff to make sure that there's no retaliation from the previous incident that they had a couple shifts before. And then the thing happens and he sees it. I mean, I was amazed that Garrett saw that at real time, what Ryan did, because when it first happened, I'm like, what are you talking about? Match penalty. And then I saw the replay. I'm like, wow, I can't believe, because if you look where Garrett is in the corner, it's hard to even see that he was able to see exactly what he did, because he's sort of in the far corner behind the faceoff. So it's pretty actually impressive. But yeah, I mean, to get to your point, Ryan's not Ryan's a good hockey player, but he's got to know that he can't cross the line again. And he's just got to figure out a way to play his style of game like a lot of players do in this league without going that extra mile. And, he's lucky from the league standpoint that he didn't, when he kicked out Draisaitl's legs in the same game that I can't remember what happened that caused him to do it. But it was the McDavid. It was some McDavid Johansson. And I think a lot of people think that Ryan's old school and probably went after Draisaitl intentionally there. You're going to go after your star is going to go after our player, so I'm going to go after another star. And I know the league was not happy when he kicked Draisaitl's legs out. And so it just felt like in that sequence of a couple of weeks, Ryan was getting to that point where I think he was frustrated with his deployment in games too, being suddenly downgraded in the lineup. I'm sure he's trying to do things to make himself more effective. And unfortunately, in this case, he went over the line. But I do think that Ryan's smart enough to realize that he's going to have all these eyes on him. And so I guess my biggest concern is that if he doesn't, if he's always cognizant of I can't cross the line, does that take away from his game? Is he can be a little late getting to checks and pucks and things like that? And to answer your other question, I do think that patience is running thin inside the organization from everything that I'm hearing. And so, I really do think that this offseason they are going to look to try to trade him. So he better be pretty strategitic with that no trade list that he turns in on June 30th.
Yeah, don't leave the Sabres off like Eric Stahl did.
I just think that he's a effective player when he played that way, and the guys love him in the room, and I think he wants to stay. And so I think the next 20 less games of the season will be really telling for me and for the organization and everything else. If he can be that player, they need him badly with Ek out, and they don't have a lot of center depth. So if he can play center or wing, this is going to be
we were talking to a former teammate of Ryan. I won't say who it was, Joe, but in the press box, you and I yesterday, and this player used to hate playing against Hartman and then became his teammate in Minnesota. And he's like, this guy's the greatest guy in the world. And that's the one thing. I mean, he's loved by his teammates, even, through stuff like this that clearly pisses off the organization because it's put them in a real bind, roster wise. I mean, a guy's losing his job today. The Wild are going to, he's losing his job because the Wild need an extra forward for this road trip, which will happen, either today or after tonight's Iowa game. So, but I think that his teammates definitely love him, but I definitely think that Bill Guerin is can't be happy with the further pickle that this has put the Wild in,
Before we let you go, I mean, I know the Four Nations took over most of your life for a couple of weeks, and we watched it on TV and could imagine what the atmosphere was like in person. Like, do you have a favorite moment or memory from that time covering it that you're like, this was a unique experience?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, because I covered Minnesota, there was I just loved being around USA hockey and watching Brock Faber and Matt Boldy get the accolades that we always see here. Brock Faber is now on the national stage. Now people get it. As a GM told me the other day, $8.5 million is going to be nothing for him in a couple of years when the cap continues to go up. And Boldy obviously performed well as well. But the hockey was awesome. It was just great. The access was incredible, just being around those guys. It was awesome getting to know a lot of these USA hockey guys, better, the Charlie McAvoys, Dylan Larkin, just even, you saw last night, getting and chatting with him again and getting to know him was cool. But the league and the PA did such a great job, and all the credit goes to the players, because if they went there thinking this was going to be a glorified all-star game, it would not have been nearly as entertaining. And as much as it sucks to see so many guys around the league hurt from this tournament, this is why the league and the PA wanted it in this window, because it was theirs. There was no football to contend with. There's no baseball, stretch drive for the playoffs coming up. It was just hockey, and they did an incredible job. And so I give the league and the PA all the credit for this iteration. It sucks. If you're a Florida Panthers fan, if you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan with Shea Theodore, if you're, Ottawa with Brady Tkachuk, Rangers have had a couple injuries, and we think that maybe Eriksson Ek worsened whatever he had during the tournament. I mean, you're not happy right now. But this is the price of doing business. We knew it was inevitable that there'd be injuries.
Final question, brought to you as always by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. You and LaPanta talked about it on your show, and I know he's not the only name that was named, but I'm much like you, that I like the idea of bringing a young guy, get experience for future iterations of international competition. kind of a two-parter, I guess. One, do you think that there's a real shot that a guy like Zeev Buium could be part of the 2026 Olympic roster for Team USA? And if so, how brutal are your mentions going to be with people screaming nepotism?
Yeah. I mean, well, I got it with Boldy and Faber and those guys. I think validated the reason why they were put on the team. I do think there's a shot. I mean, there's a lot of runway that we have to see here. I mean, maybe Adam Fox sort of fixes himself in the next year, but the way that he played in this tournament, I really think that of the 8D that were there, if you include Quinn Hughes, I think 7 are probably back, at least 6. I think Sanderson's going to be part of it. Faber's going to be part of it. Slavin's going to be part of it. McAvoy, Hughes, and Werenski. Hannafin probably, but if not, you have 2 guys that are probably coming out in Hannafin and Adam Fox. But I guess my guess is Hannafin's there. So then the question is, what do you do with that 8D spot? Do you give it to a guy like Seth Jones or John Carlson or somebody like that? Neil Pionk, who's had a really good year for Winnipeg. Or do you go young? Do you look at Lane Hudson? Do you look at Alex Vlasic? Or do you look at a Zeev Buium? Historically, it would be a prudent thing for USA Hockey to take a future stud that's going to be part of future World Cups and Olympics and just give him that taste of being around the team and all that type of stuff. So I think there's a shot. Way too premature to say. But if I had to bet right now, I think the 8th D does go to a Vlasic or a Buium or a Hudson or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, much like Drew Doughty, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And and Doughty in that one, he wound up playing a lot. Or didn't he if I'm right, didn't he went in as 8th D and wound up playing a bunch of
he ended up slotting in, and he also almost slept through the bus to get to the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty I don't know. I think it would be a good experience, and you're right, it probably helps him that Bill Guerin's running the show.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us again. We will catch up with you after the trade deadline, which should be a busy one for you. So don't get any ski lift passes for anywhere up in Whistler or anything like that, when you're going to Seattle and Vancouver.
Yes, I will not. You don't want to see me on a ski hill anyway. I once did, those pull ropes. I once couldn't even navigate that when I was skiing in Malone, New York. Once I was like, I'm like, how do people get up on the, So if I can't go up on a bunny hill on a pull rope, you think that at this age and this weight, I'm going to be able to go up? I have been on ski lifts before, though. Actually, funny story: the 2010 Olympics. I was covering before the hockey started. I covered a lot of luge and skiing, so I was going up the mountain to do this is when I was at the Strib. I was doing a Lindsey Vonn feature, and so I take the media bus from Vancouver all the way up to Whistler at like 4 a.m. Then I take another media bus to get up to the ski hill to go there. And I'm just wearing a freaking light jacket like this and, my normal attire, boat shoes and slacks. And all of a sudden they're like, I'm like, all right, where's the media center? Like, oh, you take this ski lift up the mountain and you get up there. So anyway, so I'm out the ski lift and it's beautiful. I'm taking pictures. And again, I'm wearing slacks and boat shoes. And all of a sudden we're coming down and I start to realize that the media center is about 200 yards up the mountain and that I'm going to have to walk through snow to get there. And let's put it this way. When I walked into that media center, I took off my shoes because they were absolutely soaking wet and I was wearing dress socks. And I took one step on this laminate tile and I went ass over cheek. Made the loudest noise that you could ever hear. I look up absolutely humiliated and I got just a bunch of the world's greatest ski reporters staring at me looking at who the hell is this moron that's not dressed for the occasion. So yeah,
just a hockey writer.
Yeah. So I've learned my lesson for the Milan Olympics, just in case I am having to cover skiing there.
Well, great. Well, thanks again for joining. We already have one beat writer for the Wild on crutches. Don't need 2. So we'll.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Take care, Mike.
See ya.
All right. Now that we got that taken care of, Joe, let's get right to it. Final segment every week. We have Keyboard Warriors hot take segment brought to you every week by our great friends at Barrel Theory Beer Company. And we have pretty much all home games here through March. It's pretty bizarre. And it's also weird, Joe, that I don't know if fans are excited about that. A little bit scary of late, but What it does mean is pre-game, post-game, or during the game, Barrel Theory Beer Company should be what fuels you through these wild games. If you're in the rink, you can get their Crowler of the Day at Section 105 or Raindrops on tap, their flagship IPA, Sections 112, 217, and Club Level 36. All right, couple hot takes here, Joe. First one, and this one's coming from me personally, and this is a little bit more out there, so, take it with a grain of salt. Toronto Maple Leafs, history of struggling when games matter. Matthews and Marner, second and third best guys on the team. Both make it to a championship game there for the Four Nations. You got them split, though. One of them was wearing the team logo, the Maple Leaf. The other one was in blue. Mitch Marner won. Do the Toronto Maple Leafs need a jersey change? Is that what's holding them back, wearing the blue?
Wow, I mean, that would be the Toronto Maple Leafs in red. That'd be something. They are Canada's team, right? I mean, there's already Montreal Canadiens in red, so
yeah,
don't know if you could do that.
I mean, Senators are in red. Why not just make all Canadian teams red?
What I don't like is the fact that media is looping in Matthews not scoring that goal in Boston as his struggles in Boston and some sort of demons are following him in that building because of the Game 7s they've lost against the Bruins. Like, I don't know. Like, he very well could have been the hero of that tournament, right? Like, he had 3 golden opportunities. One of the shots I think Hagel got a piece of. He scores that goal, all of a sudden it's a whole different narrative, right? Like, he captained USA to this big time victory over Canada and like all that stuff. Like, maybe this is the Leafs year. Like, so, and again, he didn't score, so he didn't convert. And like like McDavid did, and he had his moment. But I just didn't like the whole narratives that he can't get it done because he didn't score in overtime, and that's based on the demons that are following him in Boston.
Right, and then of course they pile on too with the fact that he was out there and could have had McDavid for that overtime winner. So like, of course, that's 100% his fault. Definitely no one else on the ice that could have picked him up.
That wasn't Fox's fault at all for trading off. But yeah, no, and now if the Leafs get the number 1 seed in the East and Boston sneaks in as the last wild card and they lose that game again, then we can have that conversation. But my guess is that they're not going to have the Boston might miss the playoffs this year. You might see maybe Detroit Red Wings in that spot instead.
Yep. Well, next one here actually does contain Mitch Marner as well. Darren Dreger actually came out and posted a few days back about Mikko Rantanen contemplating, what his future looks like. Our boy Spoke Z just quote tweets it and says, "What?" I reply saying Avs fans would absolutely lose their minds if Billy pulled off some sicko shit. And Starlax actually replies and says, "I might be crazy, but I think I would rather make a run at Marner if Toronto doesn't think they can re-sign him. He's my number 1 free agent in the offseason. He would give Cap or Boldy a legit running mate. Mikko has the size, but Marner plays right wing and center, has a right shot, and is good defensively." Joe, I ask you, in a magic world where we can just pick either of these players to sign, are you with Starlax that you would rather have Mitch Marner, or would you rather have Mikko Rantanen?
God, that's one hell of a world we're going to be living in, right? But I mean, I think both of them are big time stars, right? Rantanen's one of those guys who's been a proven playoff performer, like got the size, got everything. I guess Marner is better defensively. He could do the PK, which the Wild have struggled with. He could do everything, right? He's got that elite level shot. So it'd be close for me. Like, I still think Rantanen would be the guy for me over Marner. I think both of them have their strengths, but yeah, it'd be like a very small victory there as far as more than Marner. Because if I'm Bill Guerin, I would definitely take Mitch Marner. I just don't know how much it's going to cost. Like, I don't know if you're going to pay him more than Kirill, right? You can have Marner at 14 something, Kirill at 4. Like, that's just
same problem probably exists for Rantanen, right?
I guess it does. I just don't know. Like, the agent's been really difficult to deal with in Toronto for Mitch Marner, right?
Yeah.
And this is going to be his major, bigger payday. So, yeah. I guess in this magical world, you go for both and see which one you get. See who wants to come join them, right? Like, you got to these guys. You got to see these players have to want to come here too if they free agency.
there's the hot take in all this, Joe. You guys sell me. Like, they have to come in and give a presentation on why they would be better than each other. And the winner gets a matching contract with Kirill. I like that. Okay. Oh, shit. Last one I have here, and this is, there's been a lot of talk now, like, is the All-Star game dead? Right? I think there's a lot of reason that you would think probably, but at the end of the day, sponsors need to be appeased. Like, it's not going to go away completely. And there's been people that have talked about like, oh, just make it a skills competition, or, oh, make it be more engagement with like young kids and fans. Oh, let's like turn this into more of like a media row, like get them more out there. I'm going to spin this into bring in the best personalities. And like, you want to obviously align that with some of like the star players, like they're doing with the Amazon series. But I say you get them all together for like a 3 or 4 day stretch, and you come up with some either accumulation of multiple, or pick one, go with some reality TV game show type vibe and have all these players like compete and be on teams and go against each other. Like a show that we're watching right now. I don't know if you've seen it, Joe. Are you familiar with Traders?
No.
So it's built off of a game called Werewolf. And I don't know which one came first, but essentially the idea is that the few who are informed will always defeat the masses. So there's like 2 or 3 people who are traders. Yeah. Everyone else in the house is not a trader, but no one knows who any of them are. And you go after each other, and like you try and figure out throughout the course of like different events and trying to add money to the pot. If the traders make it to the end, they get the money. Yeah. If you sniff out all the traders, all the remaining non-traders get the money. Like something like that, where you get more personality, you get people going at each other. Like, I just think any kind of reality game show that you want to come up with all these players for a 3 or 4 day stretch, it's not getting the kids involved anymore, but you're actually going to grab a lot more like adult viewership that you might not have. Kind of like you saw here with a lot of people like, oh, I just learned about hockey because there were 3 fights at the beginning of a game.
Well, I thought they had a couple years ago in the Florida All-Star game. Didn't they have some off the ice stuff, like a golf or different little competitions off the ice? Like
that was cool.
It was, so there's combination. I think if you do that, got a real world thing of a ball on the couch and hanging out, like, you know, make them do like Amazing Race. That'd be kind of fun. Make them do like kind of like a pick a city and have them kind of all like a scavenger hunt thing, or like have them go play ping pong or do some other thing. Like, I don't know if they would be up for that. There probably have to be some sort of hockey involved.
Yeah.
You can get like all the celebrities, Steve Carell and Bieber, to play in a game with them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to replicate the 4 nations every year, but we talked about having like USA, Canada versus the world, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, All-Star game is not nearly the same as this. So I don't know if they're going to kill it because it's based for TV and like sponsors, and like they get a lot out of it. So the networks. So, but there's got to be a different way to be creative and playing off the Amazon TV series. There's got to be a way to do some off the ice things that people are really going to love. I'm looking forward to seeing like the 4 nations behind the scenes, because all the guys were mic'd up the whole time.
No, that is going to be awesome. That maybe is the way to do it, because they care, right? This is like international competition. That's why 4 nations was cool. What if you let players make their teams, right? Like, who wants to participate? Make your team. Here's what you win if you like win the whole thing. But like, maybe you have something where there's like all the Gophers in the NHL make a team.
Yeah.
Like, have something like that where it's like, if you're telling me that if you get all the Gopher alums versus all the North Dakota alums playing in a game, they're not going to go out there and give it.
Yeah.
There's something there. We got to pull at the string a little bit harder, but there's something there that we can work with to make an actual game be relevant. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And it's, this pod was fun talking with Mike about the deadline, and the one we do next week, a few days away or a day or so away from the deadline, will be interesting as well. A lot could have changed from today until a week from now. Make sure everybody stays tuned to us, to The Athletic. We have our wild trade tracker we do every year. It'll be popping up this afternoon with me and Mike, going over some different scenarios and stuff, and we'll be updating that throughout the course of the week and weekend. I will do a Who Says No evaluating fan proposals for trades, which will be a lot of fun, or I'm kind of regretting it now, looking at the comment section, what it might be. Every year there's always some crazy one, but feel free to send us anything, info, any questions, and look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Everyone get your who says no's in. We'll take the best ones and we'll talk about them on the pod next week. But yes, next week, Lou Nanny jumps on to talk about the state tournament in USA Hockey. Everyone, if you haven't already, subscribe, 5 stars. Check us out on YouTube at The Soda Pod. Appreciate you all. We'll see you next week.